Thank you very much for your generous introduction, Suresh. I do indeed recall the incident that you described, but I only sincerely hope that when I came on the line at 11 or 11:30 at night and I spoke to you, I did not say, I have managed to persuade the president. He did not need any persuasion. The decision was his. I was only the file carrier. I can assure you that. K.R. Narayanan was an extraordinary human being. And he brought to the office of the President of India an independent concept of the presidency of India, which was not an assertive presidency, but a presidency that was aware of both its powers and the need to keep those powers in line with the spirit of the Constitution, which is a democratic constitution vesting authority in the elected representative of the people. He did not cavil at the prospect of taking a principled stand if he was sure of his ground, as he was in the case of the Gopalkrishna Gandhi. He heard a very moving song sung to commemorate Shaheed Bhagat Singh. This happens to be the anniversary of Bhagat Singh's execution. So I would like to take this opportunity to say, right at the start, and propelled also by your reference to the Gopalkrishna Commutation, that India must move determinedly forward towards the abolition of the capital punishment. And I say this, although we have all resonated to the song for Shaheed Bhagat Singh, and his is a name that strikes a chord across the country. Let me also say that in this hall itself there will be several people who would like to think about it before saying capital punishment should go. But a great number of people in India may want capital punishment to remain on the statute books. And that is where Jayaprakash Narayan comes in. He did not hesitate to go against what could be called the popular will, the prevailing current. He did not hesitate to espouse unpopular causes. If he was convinced in his mind that that was the right thing to do, he became by popular consent Lok Nayak. But he did not seek that designation. He did not even particularly revel in that designation, in that appellation. It came to him almost by chance. He was a friend of Democrats in distress. He was a refuge to dissenters in peril. He was a counselor to dacoits who were willing to reform. He was a sounding post to secessionists and recalcitrants, also to a large number of very eccentric people. He was a humdrum of India's neighbors in their arguments and disputes with India. He was an empathizer of Tibet vis-à-vis China, Hungary vis-à-vis Soviet Russia, East Pakistan vis-à-vis Islamabad, the Democrats in Nepal vis-à-vis monarchy and oligarchy in that country, and on the side of everyone who was in a situation of injustice in India. And this is because he was a man of conscience, which is equal to being a loner. Jayaprakash Narayan commanded a mass following. And Professor Sinha, who is our chairman today, knows how vast that mass was. But that happened on 2 or 3 occasions, such as the Quit India movement, and then later in the movement which he himself organized, the Navnirman movement, 74, 75. But there were many occasions when he was alone, and people almost shrank from his company. One such moment was in 1962, shortly after the war had ended with China. And St. Stephen's College, to which Professor Ramachandra Guha, who is here, and perhaps others here too, had the privilege to belong, invited Jayaprakash Narayan. Not many colleges would have invited Jayaprakash Narayan, but St. Stephen's College, did invite him to speak on nationalism. Jayaprakash Narayan comes to the hall in St. Stephen's College. It's a full hall like this. And he starts by saying, nationalism in India, before independence and after is the subject. Let me tell you, friends, and this is a man who had been espousing the cause of Tibet. Let me tell you, friends, even the Chinese are, after all, as Asians, our brothers and sisters. You could have heard the shadow of a pin drop, not just a pin. That was Jayaprakash Narayan. Like to recall this occasion, not that this is an occasion to recite his life, but just as an entry point to the subject of today's discussion. But when he came back in 1929 from the United States, having spent 7 years there, he was extremely young. He was just barely 27 or 28. He comes 1929. Which is very historic here, because that is the year when Jawaharlal Nehru, who is 40, has been elected President of Congress. And Jayaprakash comes with his wife, Prabhavati, who is like adopted daughter of Gandhi, into the Gandhi household. He is like a son-in-law who has not yet met the adoptive father-in-law and mother-in-law. He comes to Wardha with his wife, who belongs to Wardha, who is the daughter of Wardha. And he's waiting. The Congress working committee is in session. And then it closes, and 40-year-old Congress President-elect comes out, sees this young man just returned from America, very much a Marxist who has read Das Kapital, all volumes, even Rosa Luxemburg, and says to him, goes up to him and says, "Main Jawaharlal hu." Jayaprakash returns the handshake and says, "Main Jayaprakash." Now that, the two initials shared by the two JNs, gave us a tremendous polarization. Jawaharlal Nehru, Democrat of Democrats. Went with him on the train immediately after to Delhi, then on to Lahore, where he was officially to become anointed as Congress president. Starts this saga. Of course, Jayaprakash, the Democrat of Democrats, is well. But I would like here to draw a distinction, which is a distinction which Google will illustrate very easily. One click and you will know the difference. Democracy is democracy, and a republic is democracy plus something. Of course, in a country like Sri Lanka, the Republic of Sri Lanka, we can have Mahinda Rajapaksa. But still, at its best, a republic is democracy plus. And where is it plus? Now, India is great at using its Sanskrit heritage. Rarely, but there again, sometimes it's Persian heritage, becoming more and more rare now, to vivify its own self-image. And so we have the great motto, India's motto is. We have the emblem, the 3 lions, with the 4th lion hidden behind. And what that 4th lion is a different matter. We should speculate on that. The 3 lions up front, 4th hidden behind. And then the motto, Satyameva Jayate. Now, Satyameva Jayate is a great, great concept. But the second line in it is the clincher which has been edited. Now, I am not saying this was edited perversely. You can't have too long a motto. So you have to have a compact motto. Satyameva fits. It's also the title used by Raja Gopalkrishna for his writings, for the collection of his writings. But what is the clincher which has been elided? Nanritam, not untruth. Truth alone means not untruth. So that's ramming it in. It rams it in saying, do not think truth alone, not untruth. Likewise, we have the off-quoted Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. The good of the many, the happiness of the many. There is an element of the majority in that. Many is majority. Democracy is about majority. So as long as the many are happy, the many are good of the many, and happiness of the many is taken care of, all is tickety-boo. But no, the Upanishad says something else. Now, they were not thinking of Republic of India 1948, Hindutva and all that. Whoever the intelligence which has crafted the Upanishads was not, but had the intelligence about this huge chunk of India and its multifarious people. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya, or maybe it is Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya. Sarva Lokashrayaya. It may be the good of the many, the happiness of the many, but India is the sanctuary for every single person who is on that territory. Sarva Lokashrayaya, Jayaprakashaya. With everybody else believed in Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. But he championed the elided, elliptical follow-up of that concept, which is Sarva Lokashraya. Letter and spirit. In these editings, every quotation incidentally is a form of editing. When we quote somebody, we may be absolutely right, not a syllable missing, quote unquote, but we have edited. So there is something called the letter, there is something called the spirit. The letter and spirit of the Constitution have to be borne in mind when we see the text of the Constitution. It has been felt by some, I have felt that too, that the Constitution of India was written or crafted or conceived by the honest for the good, by the idealistic for the fair-minded. It was a document of great innocence set afloat on the river of evolving experience. The provision in it for the declaration of an emergency is an example of that trusting innocence of the Constitution. When it originally said that an emergency can be promulgated in India for reasons in all the states, some of the states and the nation as a whole, Article 350. For reasons which included what was called national unrest, a phrase like that. They did not imagine that it could ever be misused by the holders of the highest offices in the land. What is a disturbance? It's a 144 matter. But in emergency, it suspends all civil liberties. every conceivable right, including the right to life. That could happen by a perverse interpretation of that provision, something which the founding authors of the Constitution would not have ever imagined. But it is exactly what happened. And we must today, while commemorating the return of the rights which have been suspended in the emergency, and remembering Jayaprakash, also remember Justice H.R. Khanna, whose minority judgment in the habeas corpus case, minority judgment, 1 against 4. The 4 said habeas corpus is not functional when the emergency is on. No court can ask for a person to be produced if that person has been detained under the rights or the privileges or the powers given by the emergency to those who can arrest people. Justice Khanna demanded. He said what is at stake is the rule of law. Justice Khanna was superseded, Chief Justice's post was vacant. Justice Khanna was superseded. And one of the other judges who did not dissent but who had put their stamp on the case became Chief Justice, Justice M.H. Baig. Now, I do not know much about that good man. But all I do know is that once he became Chief Justice, the fact was not forgotten that in that matter, Justice Baig said, there are arrests, there are detainees, but I am told, and this was during the emergency, he was talking about the period during the emergency, people held, detained during the emergency. Justice Baig said, I am told that due care is taken of them in the jail. They are properly fed and looked after almost with maternal care. He became the Chief Justice, there is no surprise. So today, when we are assured that a maternal, paternal, grandparental, avuncular, every kind of care is available to all of us, we should remember Justice H.R. Khanna and Justice M.H. Baig. The power and tyranny of wealth, the politics of power did not afflict the Indira Gandhi government alone. But it must be said that the irony of ironies is that it was the Congress that gifted to us the suspension of the freedoms which the fighters for freedom and the struggle for independence had brought to us. And for reasons which were pitifully specious. But the Republic staggered as the democratic rights wavered. The Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabhas, all of them went along. But for a few people who knew that what was happening was grossly wrong, the dissent, which is the oxygen of the democracy and the lifeblood of the republic, was being throttled. Dissenters can be many. There can be professional dissenters, dissenters who make a livelihood of dissent, dissenters who are boring and tedious beyond belief. But then there are also honest dissenters. There is room for dissent in a democracy. And that is where the difference between a democracy and a republic becomes very important. every democracy has an opposition. If there is no opposition, it is no democracy. Which is why Shri Arvind Kejriwal is well advised to be his own leader of the House and his own leader of the opposition. 67 out of 70 is no democracy. If you are not going to be your own leader of the opposition, make your assembly as critical of yourself, self-critical if there is no opposition. That is why Arvind Kejriwal is now being asked to be his own leader of the opposition. So there is always an opposition in a democracy. An opponent is part of the democratic edifice. But a dissenter is different. A dissenter is part of the republican fabric. There can be a dissenter in democracy. But a republic requires and has space for dissent. Whereas a democracy has space for opposition. An opposition party today can become the ruling party tomorrow. But a dissenter is a dissenter in an opposition governed democracy or an opposition allowing democracy, and also in a republic. But a dissenter is vital in a dictatorship, like India was 75 to 77. Like Soviet Union was, like China was, and in many ways continues to be. And a dissenter is vital in all situations in the Republic as well. For there are issues which are not popular issues, but issues like capital punishment, which have to be espoused by dissenters. And when dissent is smothered, much more than opposition is smothered, a very fundamental liberty of thought and belief is smothered. Letter and spirit. There is no emergency in force in India today. There has been no prolongation of emergency, either in the states, or in a part of the states, or in the country. Nor do I believe there can be a proclamation of emergency today, thanks to Jayaprakash Narayan. We should also acknowledge the fact that conventional opposition leaders and opposition parties can suddenly discover a dissenter in themselves and become more than conventional opposition leaders. Several, so to say, conventional opposition leaders and opposition activists, when they were picked up during the emergency and jailed without trial, became dissenters. They became very much bigger than themselves. When they discovered their own fiber in jail, they became something else. And we have to today acknowledge the fact that in this very city, Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi was jailed during the emergency. And let us also admit, facts are facts. Mr. Anant Kumar was also a prisoner in the emergency in this city. Facts are facts. And the Janasangh, as it was, became the Janata Party later. Now the BJP has not quite forgotten the kind of Midas touch which Jayaprakash movement gave to them. It brought them out of a kind of a Hindutva ghetto to the forefront of a democratic dissent movement. Which is why I believe that it was Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government that conferred posthumously the Bharat Ratna to Jayaprakash Narayan. Now Jayaprakash Narayan did not need the Bharat Ratna. The Bharat Ratna needed Jayaprakash Narayan. But whatever be the case, no Congress government in India would have ever given the Bharat Ratna to Jayaprakash Narayan. Atal Bihari Vajpayee did. Facts are facts. Jayaprakash Narayan today, you cannot predict what he will say. Because if he could, then he would not be Jayaprakash Narayan. But of one thing we can be sure, he would not have said with 77, the need for dissent is finished. We have revived our freedoms, the matter is over. अब किश्ती को आगे तुम बढ़ाओ. He would not have said that. There is no emergency in force today. But let us examine for a few moments. I shall not detain you for too long. For a few moments, the ingredients of authoritarianism, which is what the emergency was, an unashamed exercise in authoritarianism and self-assertion. The ingredients are the pursuit of the agenda of personal cultism, the cult of a great national helmsman, in that case, helmswoman. India is India, India is India, Durga, Kali, all that was a gift of innocence. That cult of pursuit is an element of this. Whether it is Pol Pot, or Idi Amin, Papa Duvalier, Hitler, Stalin, whether it is the pre-war or the post-war, pre-war dictatorships of the Soviet Union, China, or post-war China, Asia and Africa, these are the hallmarks. Dissent evaporates, fear replaces dissent, fear extinguishes dissent, fear and conformism become the order of the day. We should be fair. Let us not, to ourselves or to others, exaggerate anything. The short time that I was working in Kolkata, a delegation came to me and said, great fury against the then CPM government. Rajyapal Mahashoya, hundreds of women have been raped by the CPIM. I said, please, do not say that. Do not say that to me. I know that is wrong. If you have evidence of one rape, uncontested, incontestable evidence of one rape, let me have it. I will ask for details. But don't make this kind of brash comment. It defeats your own case. It finishes your own credibility. So let us be fair. We have not heard anything said which tantamounts to the image of Papa Duvalier. No. But does that mean there is no fear? No, there is. In Tamil, there is this beautiful word, and there must be an equivalent in Kannada, called, the word is alavu, proportion. There is alavu in dance, there is balance in dance, there is alavu in speech. Alavu is an indescribably brilliant word. So there has to be alavu in what we say. Let us not cross that alavu in our thoughts of speech. Is there a draconian emergency on today? No. So there is no fear today? No, there is. But that present level of fear itself is unacceptable in a country which has been through the fires of the emergency. We do not have a state of emergency today, but we have in the air whiffs of the emergency sentiment. We have strains of the emergency doctrine and palpable pulsations of emergency fear. I believe this is reversible for the reason that JP still means something to the Bharatiya Janata Party. But even more for the reason that our country is alert and awake in a manner it has not ever been. Let us not dispute or deny or denigrate the fact that this government has got 30-31% of the votes cast. It has got it. Under the first past post system, it is perfectly entitled to be in power. But let us not forget that 69 to 70% of the people of India have voted differently. They have not voted the same differently, but they have voted differently. Is this a strength or a weakness? Hard to say. Because the supremo phenomenon is not confined to the BJP alone. But Congress does not have a supremo like the BJP does. But the Congress has not been hospitable to dissent either. The Congress has been hospitable to sycophancy. I have a lot of time and a lot of respect for the Congress president. She has been hurled into a position of responsibility that is not of her making. But her party has not given her any strength. It only wants to derive strength from her, which is the strength which she has derived from the legacy of the man who in 1929 became at the young age of 40 the Congress president of India and the future prime minister. That aura, the Congress party with all its differentiated membership wants to in a way exploit. They give her nothing. They derive and want everything from her. They have as a result, in effect, made her a kind of superior. Regional parties in our country are also supremo parties. Let us not brand only the two national parties as being anti-dissent. There is fear in the states because of the supremo leaderships of the different state parties. Not every regional party is like that, but many. I do not have to name them. From Maharashtra to West Bengal to Tamil Nadu, supremo parties are standing, and there is a lack of dissent within those parties. And since there is a lack of dissent within those parties, there is an absence of the culture of dissent or an undernourishment of the culture of dissent in those states. So there are instances, emergency can be promulgated in the states, some of the states, and in all the states. Similarly, the spirit of the emergency is an unpromulgated fact in several states. So what happens? Those parties which have the same attitude to dissent in their states cannot look the center in its eye and say, hey, you, do this or don't do this. Dissent enfeebles the dictator. The absence of dissent enfeebles the common man. How many states today can upbraid the center and say, why have you not appointed a chief information commissioner? It is 9 months we do not have a CIC in the country. Is this why the RTI Act was enacted? They can't. Because what is the condition of information officers in their own states? It is unthinkable that a country of our size should have something as remarkable as the RTI Act. It is an act which is misused very often by people to just incriminate, humiliate and annoy petty officials. Waste of time. But by and large, it is an extraordinary instrument. Along the length and breadth of India where English is not spoken, RTI, those three letters are known today. RTI is known. But no CIC. On this day, let us demand of the Senate that the office of the Chief Information Commissioner be filled, not just expeditiously, but persuading the country that that office is not a sinnership, it's not a rubber stamp, but is part of the conscience factor of the Constitution of India. How many states, how many parties, how many opposition parties, parties in opposition to the BJP can with self-respect ask for the Lokpal? What is the position of the Lokayuktas in those states? But Lokpal is something which we have to ask for stridently. As I said, nobody should imagine what Jayaprakash did. But Jayaprakash was a Lokpal agency, was a Lokanayak and a Lokpal. He was a one-man Lokpal. And today, we don't even have the officially required Lokpal. And in this, the Congress and the BJP are jointly complicit. We have to thank Anna Hazare and his colleagues, including those who are now with Arvind Kejriwal and those who are now not with Arvind Kejriwal, and Arvind Kejriwal himself, for having brought the Lokpal idea forward. Now the Lokpal and the CIC and these institutions, the CBC, the CIC, are part of the conscience provisions of the Constitution, which are part of what has been called in a different context the brooding spirit of the law, the brooding spirit of the Constitution. I shall round off now by saying that the fear that is prevailing in our country is the starkest and the most palpable among the minority communities in India. This level of fear in those communities has precedence only in times of the riots that have defaced the history of our country. But in times when there are no riots in real time, there has never been a time when fear has been so pronounced in the hearts and minds of the minority communities of India. Jayaprakash Narayan would not have been able to stand or stark the sight of a cow being slaughtered. But Jayaprakash Narayan would not have allowed cow slaughter to become a political tool in the hands of a majority party which is using the majority community's susceptibilities, sentiments and heartstrings to needy the minority community, in this case the Muslim community in particular. Gandhi has himself said about cow slaughter things which I will urge you to explore for yourselves in the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. Likewise, and more pertinently, the whole business of conversion. Where is this issue of conversion suddenly coming from? It is true. I'll go again. It is true. The Prime Minister has said nothing in favor of Kharlapsi. But then the Prime Minister has said nothing against so many things. And they are happening. They are being justified. Conversion and reconversion have been part of our country's life for centuries. But the political payload that is being put into the matter today is unprecedented. Without doubt, this is the first time that so sharp a polarization is being sought to be introduced in the trust between communities in India. We are meeting St. Joseph's in I will not reproduce with my hands the gesture which a Christian friend of mine told me about when he said an RSS friend of his said that we will do this to the Muslims of India. I will not reproduce that gesture because it is ugly. But he said about the Christians, and my friend is a Christian, he told my Christian friend, when it comes to you, we will just do this. This is where the republic comes in. We may have a majority community which is Hindu, but the minority community has every right to tell the man who said this to go take a walk. But he is not being told that. What is happening to churches is being defined and defended as something unconnected with religion. It can happen in one place. Coincidence is a repetition by one. It can happen in two places, coincidence. 3, 4, 5, so many. Only about personal and property matters. We are not children. The world honors us for being the home of Mother Teresa. But she, blessed saint, has to be controversialized in India. And Christmas should become a good governance day, as if we want governance to be good only on one day in a year. There is fear among Muslims and Christians, and there is still a sense of justice having evaded among them the Sikhs. So this non-promulgated fear, which is an element of a promulgated state of emergency, has to be faced by all those who have respect for the legacy of Gopalkrishna Gandhi. No human being is perfect. The Buddha was not. Ask Yashodhara. Gandhi was not. Ask Kasturba. Jayaprakash was not. Ask Prabhavati. But there are some who approximate the highest in terms of purity of intent and purity of means. We should not make a cult of Jayaprakash, but we should learn from the example he has set of uncompromising dissent, not just against a supremo, but against the supremacist, dominant, status quoism and self-promotion and self-seeking of different power groups in our midst, at the center, in the states, in politics, in corporates, and in our communities. I shall say the final word now by referring to another unprecedented combination that has occurred. During the emergency, 75-77, there was a kind of an attempt to combine socialist rhetoric with political realpolitik or opportunism. Today, there is a great attempt at combining two pulls, two compulsions in the public. One, the inborn, inbuilt, natural set of prejudices which all of us have about communities, other communities, our community. Polarization by bringing up things like Kaushuta, temples. But the other great pull, the pull of the good life via the consumerist world model of globalization. The corporate, communal binary is like the great combination of two demigods wanting to snuff out dissent by a combination of fear and seduction. The latter is even more difficult to resist than the former. In the emergency which Jayaprakash faced, the problem was fear, not seduction except when it came to some small loaves and fishes of office. But today, it's much more difficult. And that is why it is much more important to resist. In the northern Hindi-speaking parts of India, Jayaprakash was hailed as Andheri mein ek Prakash, Jayaprakash, Jayaprakash. There is not an andhera yet, but there is a kind of a twilight which could slip into andhera. But I don't think the people of India will allow that to happen.